Views interactive webinar series. We have an excellent guest speaker today, Dr. V. Raghunathan, who will be speaking on the Mahabharata and the MBA, the lessons for the workplace. Given the fact that the topic is very interesting and we have a befitting guest to speak on this topic, we are oversubscribed and we have a large number of people who are joining the session. We are very thankful to all of you for having taken time from your busy schedule and registering for this webinar. As I mentioned, the topic for today is the Mahabharata and the MBA lessons for the workplace. We will straight away get into this in terms of what you can expect the next 1 hour or so from now. The agenda for the day is we have 30 minutes in which the guest speaker will deliver his talk on the topic, followed by a 15-20 minutes interaction by Professor R. Prasad. And then there is another session of 15 to 20 minutes again. The remaining questions can be handled by Professor R. Prasad himself. That is in the Q&A session with the audience. I think overall it will be little more than 1 hour. Although we have scheduled it for 1 hour, it will probably cross 1 hour, 15 minutes or so. So that is the rough agenda for the day. And then I take great pleasure in introducing the esteemed guest today, Dr. V. Raghunathan. He's an academic, author, corporate citizen, columnist, and hobbyist. He's a PhD from IIM Calcutta. He's currently the adjunct professor at Schulich School of Business, York University, Toronto. He was at IIM Ahmedabad from 1982 to 2021. Former professor of finance there, formerly president of ING Vaishya Bank from 2001 to 4, former CEO of GMR Foundation 2005 to 18. He has been on numerous boards. We have only shortlisted a few: stock exchanges, education institutions and hospitals, and various national level committees of the Finance Ministry, Securities and Exchange Board of India, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, etc. He has authored 15 books and written over 600 articles and papers. And very interestingly, he has a huge collection of the ancient Indian locks. That's his hobby. And very, very interesting to note that collection of locks is also a hobby, which I have seen for the first time with sir. I now request our guest, Dr. V. Raghunathan, to start the session, and then we will take it up from here, probably roughly for around 25 to 30 minutes. And then I will introduce the moderator and we'll start the question and answer session after that. Thank you very much, and over to Dr. Raghunathan.
Thank you, Professor Sudhakar Rao. You've been most gracious. First of all, let me make a minor correction, which is of my mistake. My stint at IMA was from 1982 to 2001, which is about 20 years. So it's not 21, it should be 01. But thank you very much for having me over at this session. And it's always exciting to speak to the younger generation, especially as the hair keep getting whiter. The interaction with the younger generation keeps getting fewer and far between. So I'm always happy at an opportunity of this kind. Though when I saw the title now properly, that these are about wise words, I wonder if you haven't made a mistake in calling me over. And also talking about something on Mahabharata to the MBAs and the workplace lessons and so forth. See, first and foremost, let me confess, I am no Devidat Patnaik. For the matter of that, you can call me an agnostic, you can call me an atheist, you can call me a heathen, you can call me a pagan. But I certainly am not even religious, or for that matter, a believer in God in the traditional sense of the word. And my interest in Mahabharata is hardly religious. I'm not well versed in Indian scriptures or many other holy books, or I haven't made any deep study of the Ramayana and Mahabharata either. I can only suspect that the reason why I've been called here to speak on this subject by you is because I have two books, as a matter of fact, relating to Mahabharata. One was what was titled as The Locks, Mahabharata and Mathematics. You just now referred to my lock collection as a hobby. So I just told some stories from Mahabharata which seem to weave through some parallels of the locks that I have, one of the largest collection of. And then I saw some parallels between them and some mathematics and so on. So it was more a fun book. It was not so much depth into Mahabharata as having fun with three different lateral subjects, which obviously on the face of it seem to have nothing to do with each other. And because while writing this book, I had read some Mahabharata, whether it was K. Munshi's or Rajaji Rajgopalachari's book and so on, I had some excess reading left after I wrote that first book. Now it's like this, when you have guests at home and you have cooked a little extra, you always shove it in the fridge and use it next day. And this excess reading that I had was parked on my computer. And then I said, okay, now what do I do with it? And that is how my second book relating to Mahabharata, namely Duryodhana, came about, where I played a sort of Ram Jethmalani to Duryodhana, where my take was a very different kind of a take. I said, look, he's as grey a character in Mahabharata as any other character from the Pandavas' side. And why was he painted a darker shade of black as a gory villain, the villain of the villains, rivaling the Bollywood villains for that matter. So so I thought I needed to, from my perspective of Duryodhana, needed to put some matters in a proper perspective, and that was my second book. That's it. So now the question is, considering I'm neither well versed in Mahabharata nor in Ramayana, how do I really talk about the lessons from Mahabharata for an MBA and lessons for work life? Well, first and foremost, I do not even know whether much of your audience, which may be from Gen Z, Generation Z as they call them, born between 1995 and 2015, give or take. These are all youngsters whose idea of Mahabharata may be only from WhatsApp or social media or whatever. I really doubt if many of them have really read a whole book on Mahabharata, even a popular book for that matter, or at most somebody might have seen some snatches of TV serials probably. But if there are people who are well versed in Mahabharata, nothing like it. But if people are well versed in Mahabharata, then they really don't need a talk from me on what the lessons there are for management graduate or a decision maker in the corporate life. But if they haven't read anything, I wonder if in half an hour, a non-scholar like me can really make any strong points for people to take away. So I'm, using a loose word, screwed one way or other. But let me be in it in any case. If one were to summarize Mahabharata, which is actually one of the greatest ever epics, which is a long story of valor and wisdom, machinations and mysteries, strategy and strong arm tactics, friendship and enmity, courage and fear, love and hate, anger and delight, monogamy and polyandry and polygamy, caste and creed, of loyalty and betrayal, of statecraft and sufferance, diplomacy and deception, truths and half-truths. I could go on. In other words, Mahabharata effectively to me, which is a 5,000-year-old epic, and probably one of the finest in the world anywhere. You can include Iliad and you can include Odyssey. They won't be able to light a candle to Mahabharata as far as the quality of an epic goes. And over the 5,000 years, this epic has actually, as if it's an organic life, it has grown into a giant of an epic where people have taken liberties. Of course, also in India, mythology and history keep getting mixed up time and again. So it stands today in front of us as a mini universe in its own right, from which you can mine all these human characteristics that I talked about. Any conceivable situation, which is a decision-making situation, which calls for some kind of a deeper strategic thinking, can be mined out of Mahabharata alone. So it is in this sense that I was saying that if, in a half an hour kind of a interaction, yeah.
Sir, can we have the benefit of looking at you when you're speaking? Kindly.
I thought you were looking at me. I'm sorry.
Your video is off, sir.
No, it's on. My video is on. Let me see what the problem is, because it is perfectly on. I can see that. Because it's saying stop video. If I stop video, it crosses it. It is, the video is on. Let me, now it's on?
Yes. Yes. Sir.
No, it went away again. I don't know what. Okay, sorry. All right. I think I can see the problem.
Thank you, sir.
My canvas cover on the iPad was covering the whole, which I didn't realize. My apologies. Okay, all right. Okay now? Right. So now my point was that there is so much that you can talk about. The number of situations that you can talk about are so many that it's practically impossible to do justice to this rich topic, which you have been magnanimous enough to give to somebody so inadequately prepared as me. You see, if one were just to talk about the usual that goes through in the books that you see of what management lessons one can learn from Mahabharata, they will tell you all kinds of things from planning, organizing, staffing, directing, leading, and controlling, which is the standard principles of management, which can all, of course, be mined from Mahabharata. Delivering the promise or not giving up under adversity, or the importance of being prepared, good strategy versus brute hard firing power, importance of having allies and friends, teamwork and talent, commitment, diplomacy, division of work. So all these are very standard lessons in management, which of course you can mine out of Mahabharata as well. But I don't think any of these really are necessarily mined only because there are lessons in Mahabharata. We can also mine these from Mahabharata. But even if Mahabharata had never been written, the modern literature of management would have been sufficient to develop many of these teachings. But where Mahabharata scores is in a very, very niche and unique area in management, which is game theory. Now, I'm going to explain myself a little because it is better that at the end of it, somebody takes away one very useful nugget of learning from Mahabharata than having a scattershot all around and talking about 25 different lessons that Mahabharata can give us. I said Mahabharata gives us a great lesson on game theory. Let me give an example using the good old prisoner's dilemma framework, which many management students would either have read or will probably read as they go through their various courses. But for the sake of brief introduction, let me put the problem of what prisoner's dilemma is all about. It says that supposing Sudhakar here and Raghu, both of us, are some kind of allies in some crime, and we are both caught by the police and put in two different cells. The police walks up to Sudhakar and tells him that, look here, we have enough material on both of you to put you both away for 2 years each. But if you cooperate with the police as a plea bargainer, then we will let you go scot-free and we will give Raghu 5 years behind the slammer. Now, the first assumption that we make is we are both supremely selfish. We might have been friends or collaborators, that apart. When it comes to anything else, like most Indians are very selfish, wherever you can get away without wearing your mask, you get away without wearing your mask or seat belt or helmet or whatever. Supposing we are both supremely selfish, but this is the offer made to Sudhakar Rao, that anyway, we have enough evidence to put you both away for 2 years. But if you sing on Raghu, you will go scot-free, Raghu will get 5 years. Then Sudhakar obviously is wondering, look, it sounds like a good idea, because if he pleads, if he goes for plea bargaining, he will walk out scot-free, and as a selfish person, his interest is in minimizing his own jail sentence. But then he has one doubt and he says, okay, Mr. Inspector, but if both of us croak on each other, then what will you do? Then we say, oh, in that case, we'll have to give both of you 4 years each. Now, Sudhakar is thinking, if Raghu croaks on me, what is my best strategy? What is the best thing I should do? Because if Raghu is croaked on me, he's going to walk scot-free. Why should I be an idiot who's spending 5 years in the jail? Therefore, if Raghu has spoken against me, then I should also speak against Raghu. Why should he walk free? Therefore, the best strategy for Sudhakar is to croak on me, assuming I have croaked on him. On the other hand, Sudhakar argues with himself, if Raghu is not croaking on me, that is his problem. I am so selfish. My interest is to minimize my own jail sentence. So if he is not croaking on me, and if I croak on him, that idiot will get 5 years and I will walk scot-free. So whether Raghu croaks on me or does not croak on me, what is the best strategy from Sudhakar's viewpoint? To croak on Raghu. Now, but the policeman is also telling Sudhakar Rao that I'm making an identical offer to Raghu. Okay. Now, the same offer has been made to Raghunathan also. And Raghunathan is no less bright than Sudhakar Rao. So he's thinking exactly the same as Sudhakar Rao. That look, if Sudhakar Rao croaks on me, bloody hell, I'll give him 4 years back to him. Why should he walk scot-free and I get 5 years like a bum that I am? No way. And if Sudhakar Rao has not pleaded bargain with the police, then that is his problem. I will plead bargain with the police and I will walk scot-free. He will get 5 years. So both of us end up croaking on each other and both of us end up getting 4 years in the slammer. While had we both cooperated with each other and not given away the other person, we would both have got only 2 years each. This is the classic prisoner's dilemma problem. Should I croak on the other or should I not croak on the other? Now, it sounds very esoteric when we speak in this sense, but just imagine, you can take any number of day-to-day examples, for example. For instance, India argues that if we have an atomic bomb, we will be one up on Pakistan. Because if they don't have a bomb and if we have a bomb, we are stronger than them. But if Pakistan has a bomb, also we should have a bomb so that we have a counter to them. Now, Pakistan argues exactly the same way. So what happens finally is both Pakistan and India build a big atomic arsenal, money which could have been spent on COVID or with health or education, poverty alleviation and so on, keep getting spent on preparation for warfare with atomic power. So this prisoner's dilemma, the game theoretic situation that we talk about, is a very, very, very powerful dilemma. And this is the dilemma which those of you who have seen The Beautiful Mind, the movie, which is about Nash, often it's called Nash squeals on Sudhakar Rao, squeals on India, India squeals on Pakistan. So we always take actually a suboptimal approach of both of us having nuclear power or both of us squealing on each other, when both of us are worse off, relatively speaking, than we would be if neither of us was a nuclear power. Or if both of us had cooperated with each other and both Sudhakar and Raghu would have got 2 years each instead of getting 4 years each. It's the same whether you're waiting at the red light and somebody jumps the red light and goes home and nobody stops him. You say, oh, if this guy can reach home early, why shouldn't I? So everybody starts doing it. But what is good for you individually is not good for the collectivity. So what was good for Sudhakar was not good for Raghu and Sudhakar taken together. What was good for the nuclear arsenal preparation was not good for India and Pakistan taken together. It appeared very good for India or Pakistan individually, but not collectively. So these kinds of game theoretic situations and competition under management situations keep coming up repeatedly. When you talk about corporate social responsibility, yes, I can improve my profits much more if I did care about the rest of the society. My shareholders will be better off. But at the same time, then you start wondering what is the right balance between the two. And it is this game theoretic situation which John Nash, the equilibrium that he derived at was basically a defect equilibrium, where both parties are typically worse off. Now, mathematically, the only way you can solve this dilemma, actually there is no solution to the dilemma. The solution is the Nash equilibrium, which is both will defect on each other typically. That is why we see the chaos on our roads, chaos with our traffic, chaos with our garbage distribution and so on, because each one thinks he's being smarter, throwing it outside the doorstep because it's not my problem thereafter. But everybody has the same bright idea. The whole country is one big garbage heap. So how does Gita help here? Gita, which is a part of Mahabharata, where when these two princely sides are pitched on a battle for their respective share of kingdoms, when they are pitched on the Kurukshetra battlefield, suddenly Arjuna develops cold feet because he sees on the other side people lined up, include his teachers, uncles, cousins, and so on. And he wonders, is anything worth killing such close ones? So he says, no, I will not fight the war, and he puts the astras down. And Krishna, as his charioteer, gives him a bit of his mind, which is what is captured in Gita, Bhagavad Gita. To me, the crux of Bhagavad Gita is a beautiful, scripture is right, but the basic takeaway is about dharma. What it really essentially talks about in all its aspects is about dharma. The one big couplet that we can take away is what we all know. Karmanye vadhikarastu ma phaleshu kadachana. We said, do the right deed. Don't worry about the result of it. Now, I always used to wonder once upon a time that, look, what kind of nonsense is this? How can you not be result oriented? The current management literature repeatedly tells us that any decision that you make has to be result oriented. Even the argument that we had in the prisoner's dilemma was result oriented. If Raghu is going to croak on me, what is the best thing I should do? If Raghu is not going to croak on me, what is the best thing I could do? But when we were asking such result oriented questions, it turns out that the answer that we were coming out was suboptimal. But here we are told, Karmanya vadhikarastu ma phaleshu kadachana, that do the right deed, don't worry about the results. Results will take care. Results will take care. You do what you believe is the right dharma. Yes, if the choice was between black and white, you wouldn't need any great wisdom to choose what is black and what is white. Often the problem comes where the choice is between gray and gray, between one dharma and another dharma. In situations of those kinds, you look at what is a larger dharma. And if you go by the larger dharma, and that is your right conduct, and if you do the right conduct, that is carry out your dharma, the results will take care. Now apply this to prisoner's dilemma situation. If both Sudhakar and Raghu were following the dharma of friendship, let us say, and we say that, look, let us, of course, in this sense, we are talking more in terms of, two guys who have committed some minor crime together, but we don't have to look at it in terms of a crime. We were giving an example of India, Pakistan also. But if we had both followed our dharma, we would have got only 2 years each. We would have both been better off. If both India and Pakistan had followed their dharma, that going nuclear is not a good thing for the world, not leaving big carbon footprints is better for the world. If everybody believes in it and follows their dharma, the world will be a greener place. The world will have less nuclear arsenal. There will be fewer people acting with lack of trust with each other. So the biggest takeaway, as I see, is the Nash equilibrium does not have to be a Nash equilibrium when you follow the route of dharma, which means you have a higher right in the world. You have to identify what is a higher right. Yes, for me, my cost will come down if I don't care too much about, like Volkswagen did, putting those filters in their software to avoid detecting their emission standards, for example, may get you a little more profit in the short run. But in the long run, what you are doing is you're harming the globe. So obviously you are resorting to an act which is not dictated by dharma. And if everybody behave, if we bring dharma back into our lives, we talk so much about Hinduism. We all try to be, today everybody is a Hindu Bhakt and Ram Bhakt and God knows what all Bhakt. But we have forgotten our basic scripture, which talks about doing the right thing, doing dharma, wearing the mask, washing your hands. There is no need for us to do anything very big at an individual level, then follow our dharma and the world would be a better place. So to me, this one lesson, if our younger generation takes away, yes, my generation might have screwed up a lot of things and leaving a lot of cleaning up to do for the next generation, I confess. But there's nothing, again, as an individual I can do about it, except, plead guilty to the generation coming next. But I think it's time to get dharma back in our discourse. It is time to behave with a sense of right and wrong. In fact, there have been WhatsApp forwards going around where 5-year-old children are making those sticks for taking the swab with a stick and some cotton at the end and then being put into an envelope and being sealed is being done in the dirtiest conditions by 5-year-old children. In Karnataka, we have the situation where the COVID beds have been auctioned. There have been bidding for them by politicians and their underlings. So the point is, we have reached a sense of corruption level, both physical, spiritual, ethical, moral, in any which way, that unless we resort to dharma, none of these issues can ever really be solved. So I think my half an hour, 25 minutes is over now. So it's 7 o'clock. I will stop here and we can take on from whatever questions I can answer. I'll try and answer. But I think this one takeaway should be enough.
Right,
Sudhakar, back to you.
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for this engrossing session that you have taken for the last 30 minutes. It's not over, friends. We will now begin the interaction with the moderator. I now cordially invite Professor R. Prasad, who is the Director at Academic Wing of the ICFAI Group. He's also the professor and course mentor for the newly launched ICFAI online MBA program. He's been the architect of this program. He has designed it over the last couple of years, along with a huge team. And he's going to be moderating the session. A brief introduction of the moderator is that he's a distinguished alumnus of IIM Kolkata and IIT Mumbai before that. He has an experience of roughly about 3 decades, which includes corporate experience as well as teaching and research. He was an entrepreneur himself before getting into this avatar. He is also published a few articles and edited books and several conference papers that he presented. Over to you, Professor R. Prasad, to begin the session by raising a few questions that can actually build the context and the audience can feel of having sought answers from the guests that we have on this topic. Thank you, and over to you, Professor Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhakar, and thank you very much, sir, Professor Raghunathan, Dr. Raghunathan, for having introduced us into this topic in a very insightful manner, and in a manner in which perhaps many of us would not have read about the Mahabharata. So certainly, yes, I think this is worth remembering in terms of the takeaway. We have a large number of questions owing to, we have given the facility of asking a question before when they registered. So we have a large number of questions. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to aggregate it, and I'll facilitate it by asking about 5 or 6 questions to you, sir. And I would be very grateful to listen to you, as well as very thankful from the point of view of the others. So the first one, and which is the most generic, a lot of these questions fit into this, is, sir, will the study of the Mahabharata make a better manager?
Yes. In fact, I strongly recommend each and every student of management to pick up 2 very beautifully written books. And they are eternal books, actually. One is by K.M. Munshi, another by Rajagopalachari. At least these 2 thin books, each is about 250 to 60 pages, which will give you a very nice and informed idea of what the entire epic is all about. And these are books that will evoke your interest. And once that interest has been lit, you can read a whole lot of things. There are zillions of books probably, and you can ask any question online, and there are variety of answers that will crop up. But what happens is, of course, the 2 books that I'm talking about are obviously summaries. 5,000 years of epic being captured in 250, 300 pages can only give you a sampling. And many of the nuances come out only when you read the more detailed aspects, the Bhagavad Gita itself, if you read probably. But, let us also be realistic. If I say go and read Bhagavad Gita, which even I haven't read, I can't expect that I can really recommend you to read something which I haven't done myself. So the point I'm trying to make is, once you get a hang of Mahabharata, you will get to have a good sense of the kind of decision situations that it throws up, and how does one distinguish the greater right from the lesser right, or the greater bad from the lesser bad, and so on. And there are any number of those situations. The answers are indirect. The answers are not necessarily direct, but there are characters who uphold friendship like Duryodhana and Karna. There are issues of caste consciousness even at that time, which, as a matter of fact, Dronacharya and Arjuna play against Ekalavya and Karna himself and so forth. So there are many kinds of lessons that come out with which you can mold to the goodness of many characters, which stand by as a pillar of principles in complex situations. So I would certainly recommend that a good student of management should be reasonably well versed in Mahabharata, more Mahabharata than Ramayana, according to me. Mahabharata to me is a greater epic than Ramayana is.
Thank you, sir. In fact, both the books are fairly easy to read. And I think K.M. Munshi's book is set of books is particularly interesting. And he takes you away from people as divine beings and looks at each as an individual character. So you don't need to get religion in the middle, or for that matter, even spirituality in the middle.
Correct.
It's a very interesting set of books. I would also strongly, sir, thank you for bringing those two books in.
Yeah.
The second question which I'd like to pose, sir, is how does the reading of the Mahabharata benefit teachers?
Well, in a lighter vein, first and foremost, it will tell you not to do what Dronacharya did. Okay, so I would imagine that will make a much better teacher out of anybody, that all students are equal. There is no student who is more equal than the other. And I think this was a fundamental rule which Dronacharya violated. We can, of course, learn as much from what you ought not to do as from what you can do. But why teachers should learn Mahabharata in greater detail is, of course, is that only when you have 10 units of knowledge, you can, with authority impart 2 units out of it. You can't just read 2 units previous day and disgorge 2 units the next day and be a successful teacher. So this means that a deeper study of Mahabharata by teachers, especially teachers who teach general principles of management. I'm not saying that those who are teaching production and quantitative methods or statistics are likely to benefit a great deal by reading or finance and so on by reading Mahabharata, but those who teach strategy, those who teach management principles, those who teach policy, these kinds of teachers will find a lot more takeaways from a more serious study of Mahabharata. And I would certainly recommend that they spend a good deal more time on it. In fact, the interesting thing, as I said earlier, is a good teacher may mine something entirely new. We had Professor S.K. Chakravarti in IIM Calcutta, which I'm sure you are aware. I mean, you would have heard of him since you are an alumnus of IMC.
Yes.
Dr. S.K. Chakravarti had some amazing books written on this thing. We have Gurcharan Das, who has written this difficulty of doing good. We had Professor S.P. Singh in NIBM in Pune, who had written some amazing book on learning of management principles from Mahabharata and so on. So I will recommend to most management teachers to read the works of S.K. Chakravarti, S.P. Singh, and Gurcharan Das. Definitely do that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for introducing.
And even Devidutt Patnaik. Listen to some of his, he's a scholar. Devidutt Patnaik is a scholar. And he's so deeply well-versed with the nuances. Please read his books and you'll be much richer for it.
Thanks for introducing another 4 books, sir. I think the variety for people to pick up is much more here. And personally, I have sat in for Professor SKC's sessions, and therefore it is rich, and I think it gives an entirely different perspective. And certainly Gurcharan Das, I think again for people who want to look at it, just as you have mentioned, sir, about the Duryodhana and the Ram Jetlamalani perspective on him. I think he has also gone all the way to do that. And for many of you are not very familiar with Mahabharata, I think that's also a good beginning, very nearer to how you are. If you're not, don't have too much of religion in you and you don't have too much of spirituality in you, I think it will help. The third question, sir, is does a book like Mahabharata, very often this is seen as a book of belonging to a particular nation and a religion. I mean, there is a kind of attribution there unconsciously. Does it force us to box in with its own precepts than encouraging out of the box thinking?
You see, it's a question of the mindset with which you read anything. If you are a close-minded person reading Mahabharata as a religious script and so on, then you will only be talking about what? That Biplab Deb from the Tripura chief minister who said, oh, we had Wi-Fi and television in the days of Kurukshetra war, because how else could Sanjay have been narrating the Kurukshetra war's commentary to Dhritarashtra? Now, if that is a mindset with which you read Mahabharata, that is a message you will take away like an idiot. But if you say that, look, here is a rich, our own home-generated epic, which is rich in humanity, rich in human emotions, rich in human situations, rich in what one can mine out of it, and read it with that, I think it's an amazing exercise on lateral thinking. If I can write a book on logs, Mahabharata, and mathematics, what can be more, lateral thinking than that? So I'm saying that what you read, much of it depends on where you are coming from. If you come from an open mind as a modern citizen, scientifically thinking person, you will discount things. Some of it could also be an element of, imagination, where something flies and, there is the bomb is supposed to be an atomic bomb, which today some idiots look back and say India had atomic power because that is what Brahmastra was all about. So if you discount nonsense like that, you will find a lot of richness to take away.
Thank you, sir. I particularly note the clause about the home generated content. I think in an Indian context, and that too when you're surrounded by a lot of people who have been reading it, whether in bits and pieces and have it in their subconscious or in that kind of a sense. I think to relate to them, to influence them, it does make a difference.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is about, is it always necessary to wear a mask on our original self? Isn't there a way where things can be worked out in a straightforward manner?
You see, actually, it's a very idealistic question. Human beings are a complex being, okay? No other animal has the kind of emotions that I talked about. When I talked about valor and wisdom, or machinations and mysteries, or strategy and tactics, or a friendship and enmity, or a sense of courage and fear, or love and hate. Animals don't come with these kinds of emotions. They are simple, straightforward. It's all here and now. I'm hungry, I kill, I eat. I hold no grudges because you threw a stone at me some 2 weeks ago, the elephantine memory notwithstanding, which is also an anthropomorphic thing that we load on elephant. I don't know how elephants feel about things, but we think they feel about certain things the way we think we would feel in their place and so on. So, but what I'm trying to say is human beings by nature are very, very complex people. And to expect simplicity from them, openness and transparency from them is an ideal which we should strive to achieve. At least the direction is worth striving for. I don't think the end will ever be achieved, that we will ever be simple and straightforward and transparent without a mask. No, we will always have a mask. We will never reveal our innermost self to people, but the direction should be towards minimizing that complexity, keeping world a simpler place. Especially wisdom lies in being more straightforward, saying what you really mean, and other party also taking it in the right spirit and so on. So yes, the direction of being more transparent is a very worthy goal to have in life. That alone can actually improve our behavior 100-fold in many ways. Yes.
You again, I'm kind of also relating it to a more current millennial theory, which is about Maslow, and which is more applicable to human beings and not animals. And if we are generally striving in the direction of self-actualization, though it's not as easy as it seems to be, but something which is worthy of a human pursuit. And I think there are people who are trying to do something.
No, since you talk about Maslow, all I can say is each stage that he talked about, we are elongating it unduly. You see, if you go back to our own system, or the four stages of life, Balaprasa ashram, Grahastha ashram, Vanaprasa ashram, and so on. You are basically talking about, there is a stage in life where you do certain things. Then you ought to outgrow and move to the next level of wisdom and so on. But if you keep your each level of Maslow for 35 years, rather than keeping it for 20 years and moving on to the next, the stage of self-actualization never comes because you're chasing money still. Okay. So I think that sense of balance we need to have. You're right to bring in the management principle. The principles are still probably right, but some of us keep postponing the final part till we drop dead. We don't know when to stop it and go for the self-actualization.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you in adding to this discussion. The next question, sir, is about the Pandavas didn't have a choice and had to go in exile as agreed for. Now, this exile cost to employees to be away from the workplace, how do you see it would benefit employees amidst the rising complaints of work from home having become a torture? I think a number of questions are about COVID-related stress.
Understandable. You see, to be honest, there are no easy answers. If I am a 35-year-old, 2 children going to school, working from home, with my parents also being my dependents, my wife is also working and looking after the children and home, and I'm contributing what best I can. Life can be very, very, very difficult. Add to that the threat of losing one's job, because the fact of the matter is, with COVID, for example, the other day the government announced that schools ought not to charge the same level of fee if the classes are online. Now, from the parental viewpoint, I can quite understand where somebody is coming with that recommendation. But what happens to people who are employed in the school? Because unless the fee income comes, they cannot be paid. And if they cannot be paid, obviously in an online classes system, the people who will lose their jobs first will be the non-teaching staff. They will be losing their jobs. So here are two grays conflicting with each other, which is a bigger dharma. In fact, in this case, I'm not even able to see which is a bigger dharma, and the dilemma is even stronger than usual. So let us not pretend that we have answers to all the situations. These are the times, I always say, maybe the most adverse situations sometimes help us bring out the best in us. This has been seen repeatedly. We had this lady who climbed with one artificial leg, who climbed the Mount Everest, who had lost a leg in a train accident. We know about Mark Inglis, the New Zealand mountaineer who lost both the legs. And when he gives his motivational talks, he shows a picture on a mountain. He climbed the Mount Everest without both legs, both were artificial legs. And he says, when you lose something, don't worry about what you have lost. Be thankful about what you probably have. And he said, if you fall from a mountain and break your leg, how long does it take to mend it? It takes probably 2 months. He says, when I break my leg, it takes me 2 hours to unscrew that leg and put on a new leg and climb again. So look at the brighter side. So the point is, sometimes, of course, life doesn't have to be such that we discover our strengths only in times of agony and so on, only in times of utmost when we are down and out. But these are times which are probably in our whole generation we may not have seen, and we may never see another tragedy of this dimension ever again. And we simply have to dig deep into ourselves and bring out our strength to the fore and deal with it. There is no shortcut. There is no answer. There is no japam. There is no, meditation that can get you out of it. You have to find your inner core strength and count your blessing. Even today, if you sit down and look at what you have, which that person marching on the road, going to his village, 600 kilometers of a, march on his 2 feet or on a bicycle or on a two-wheeler doesn't have, then you will know that you still have something to be thankful for. And I think we just have to dig deep. There are no easy answers. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for pointing out that there is a huge opportunity inherent in this kind of a situation. And
I
think
won't even call an opportunity. I will say, yeah, it's an opportunity to discover yourself. You know, imagine 20 years later, you'll be able to tell your children or grandchildren what you went through and how you came out of it, fighting. So create that story. Look at it as a hero going through a story or a heroine going through a story. And if you are the hero and you are the heroine, how will you deal with it? Create a story for yourself and deal with it. There are any number of youngsters creating some apps to help others who are worse off than they are. Okay, so try to be a hero or a heroine of that kind.
Thank you, sir. And I think the exile also helped the Pandavas in a variety of ways.
Yeah, self-reflection. What is more important? We realize that family time is as important as a job is, which we didn't realize earlier. We took life for granted. We take that. Some of us have learned cooking, maybe. Some of us know the hardship the wife goes through. Where often we say, my wife is not working. No, you know what not working means. She is probably working much more than the breadwinner ever does. So one understands the value of work in different contexts much better. One becomes more gender sensitive probably. So there are takeaways, but of course, I don't want to make it small because all this may be fine, but the real fears are real fears. And the only way to counter that is discover that courage within you. That's all.
Thank you, sir. We move to the sixth question. Some organizations are very senior people who resemble Bhishma Pitamaha. They have nurtured the organization right from the beginning and would be very much attached to it. However, they might not fully agree with the policies of the current leadership. They are in a fix as they can neither leave the organization nor agree with the current policies. How do you think should they handle the situation?
No, that is a very good question, and it's very true. We have seen it in several large groups in the country, from Tata's to Infosys to, even in the olden days, Amul, NDTP and so on with Korean, people who have built beautiful organizations, people who have given their blood and sweat and soul to creating an organization. It is understandable that they don't find it easy to just give it all up and go away into a Vanaprastha ashram, It doesn't happen. They thought they would try to do it. That is why they stepped down probably. That is why many of them become chairman emeritus. But that chairman emeritus itself is a bit of a problem because if you completely step down, at least you are forced to be out of it. But when you are called a chairman emeritus, like many of them have been called, then there's a bit of a problem because you always have a small finger in the pie and you can keep doing some small disturbances. But yes, I think it's a question of, it's easy for me purely in an academic sense to say that people should give up and move on, but it doesn't happen that way. And as long as this is understood by the other side as well, that look, all said and done, that person gave his life and blood to creating this organization. I am a Johnny newly come. So let me understand where he or she is coming from. And also sometimes the enthusiasm of youth discounts the wisdom of age. And I think as long as the younger people understand that, yeah, he may not be as aggressive as you are, but he hasn't spent 50 years building that organization for nothing. So listen to him or her, whoever it may be. So I think there has to be a little bit of give by the older generation and a little bit of take by the newer generation. And I think then the chasm is, you see, in reality, truth is always somewhere in the middle. It's almost never on one extreme or the other extreme. It's not only those who don't let go who are only on the fault. Those who are having it now also need to understand why it is difficult to let go. If you had created something of that proportion, you would know how difficult it is to let go. So once you understand that letting go problem can be slightly better managed. And yes, what you said earlier, moving in the direction of transparency, have more dialogues, have more discussions. Everything that you disagree is not a question of being in opposition. Between two wise people, opposition can be a way of finding a better solution. So I think that wisdom ought to be there. But yes, some of us are also victims of our personalities. I speak very harshly. If you counter me 3 times, I lose my temper. So those things can happen as long as each side understands the weaknesses also of the other party. And it makes a big difference to understand each other, that this is not where so-and-so is coming from. So-and-so is coming from not because he's angry with me, but because it is his nature that when he feels too much of opposition, his spoken words can sound harsh, but his heart is in the right place. So as long as we understand things like those, I think we can make things work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing in this insight of being balanced from both sides and looking at it with multiple perspective. I'm reminded of the episode in the Mahabharata where Dhritarashtra continues to live with Yudhishthira for very long on his own personal invite, and because Yudhishthira told him that I want to listen to you and learn from you, and then finally Vidura comes in and says, "Hey, what are you doing here? You should have gone long back."
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to bring that in, but I thought if people are not fully familiar with Mahabharata, they won't relate to it. So I withheld, but you put it very neatly and crisply. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
One has to know when one has served one's time. The other has to know that the one who has served his time, what wisdom one can borrow from him.
Thank you, sir. I actually had 6 questions. I filtered 6 questions from you, but looking at how interesting the discussion is, I have one more question, sir.
Any number, I'm fine.
Yes, sir.
I'm all yours.
Yeah. This question has a lot of thoughts resident in it. And the question is how to become the CEO easily.
Well, there's no such thing as becoming a CEO easily, or either you be a brain like a Musk or somebody and come out with something that the world doesn't have. You be a Bill Gates, or you be somebody who comes out with a device like an Apple. But short of that, I think for 99.99% of the people, 99.99% of it is hard work. That is the only way. In fact, I always see how you're born, bright or otherwise, is not up to you. You are not Six Sigma by choice. You are born to Mukesh Ambani not by your choice. Okay, you don't become an Einstein by choice. So you don't become any Six Sigma thing by choice. Most of us fall between 1 Sigma. Your IQ may be between 90 and 120, give or take, if you are an average person. And 90% of what has been achieved in the world is not by the Six Sigma people. If you look at the Nobel laureates, 70% of the Nobel laureates came from unknown colleges. Nobel laureates, I'm talking about in physics, chemistry, and medical sciences, 70% of them came through unknown colleges, which means in their high schools, they were nowhere near the so-called toppers or those who came up high on the grades. But yes, it is focus, it is hard work, it is modesty to learn, willingness to learn, putting in what it takes to learn. You see a person joining a company and 6 months later he says, I have nothing more to learn from this company and somebody else is paying me 10,000 rupees more, so I'll jump and go. You are not likely to make a CEO in a hurry if that is the mindset. So let me assure you, the only way to becoming a CEO is that you be focused, work 3 times more than the next guy. There's no way you won't be a CEO. Almost a guarantee that if you work 3 times more than others, if you need to sleep 4 hours a night, sleep 4 hours a night. No one died of lack of sleep. I can assure you, I've done it for 25 years myself. You do not drop dead by sleeping 4 hours a night. I can vouch for it. But what happens is when you work harder, you get luckier. When you get harder, you get more right answers than wrong answers. When you work harder, it becomes difficult for people to know, are you right because you're more intelligent or because you're more hardworking? So the difference between intelligence and hard work starts getting obliterated. And you do more things right and you start getting luckier. And when you get luckier, more doors may open. And when more doors open, you are the luckier one to get into one of the more successful doors. And that happens. You see, life is always probabilistic. Life is not deterministic. If I knew that 20 years later, I am going to be chairman of this company, which I can if I'm Ambani's son. Why will I work? I'll take a fast riding car and have an accident in Pedder Road and get free, scot-free. Why do I need to work hard if I know I'm going to be something in my life anyway? Much of what we do, everything about life itself is only about the fact that life is probabilistic. By definition, it cannot be deterministic, which means the only way we can improve the odds in our favor is by improving those odds by working harder. The harder you work, the better those odds become. You get into an IIT, yes, being intelligent is an important part of it. But it's not as if everyone who went to an IIT has been a Nobel Prize material. No. There are any number of those, if you were to look at the IQ level, who will fall in the same band of 90 to 120, who worked more focusedly, who made some sacrifices that others do not, who managed to put in 5 hours of work a day while others were putting in half an hour a day because they had football, cricket, this, that, and everything. But there's only one Tendulkar who will ever make it to the Indian team. The rest do not. So one takes it more realistically and puts in the eggs in a basket, which is more likely to survive. So I think becoming a CEO is about all of that. And some of that wisdom has to come early in life. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think you have given a number of insights, and one amongst them is something that I'm able to relate to Mr. Anil Ambani.
Yeah.
I think he was.
Oh, yeah, right. They started exactly equally when they did the partition.
The other thing, sir, is that I think there is also an impression that, the CEO's job is very cushy and very romantic kind of a thing.
Believe me, that is what you see. In fact, I remember I've been a CEO of a large bank, private bank, and I can tell you that nobody walks a more difficult life than a CEO. Yes, his compensation sometimes is obscene. Sometimes he or she ought not to be paid what they're paid. I entirely agree with all of that. But you take that away, the responsibility that rides on a CEO, if something goes wrong. Do you remember Som Mittal was arrested when he was the vice chairman of Hewlett Packard because one of the drivers who were contracted by Hewlett Packard, one of the taxi drivers raped a girl and murdered her. Now, what are the systems that a CEO will create to ensure that everything in the organization where there are 10,000 to 5 lakh people employed, like a TCS, that everyone does his or her job right? So the head of a CEO does not lie very easy, believe me. It is one of the most difficult jobs. Actually, there are published studies to prove the life of the second in command is way better. Because beyond a certain level, whether you earn 40 million a year or 75 million a year, which may be the difference between the number 1 and number 2, whether you earn 7.5 crore a year or 4.5 crore a year, your lifestyle is not going to be any greatly different. Yeah, some stocks may appear different, the stock options may appear different, but the kind of a house you live in, the kind of schools your children go to, the kind of clubs you may go to, the size of the car that you may be driving, none of these things change. But when you are the number 2, you can spend a lot more time on things which interest you than a CEO ever can. So don't get too blue-eyed about the CEO's job. CEO's job, in some ways, it can be a great sense of satisfaction because it gives you a power to do a lot of good. But then not everybody at the top always does a lot of good. Not everybody at the top is always allowed to do a lot of good. And nor is the CEO a complete master of his own decisions. He has a board to report to. Okay. So, but yes, to a person looking at his fancy lifestyle, and especially when we read the American CEOs earning some crazy numbers, $245 million in the year 2021 or some shit like that, it sounds, something very, very fancy. But those are Six Sigma outliers. As I said, you don't choose your being a Six Sigma. And nobody said that life treats everybody equally. There are somebody who wins a lottery. What can you say about somebody who won 100 crore lottery? What can you do about it? He bought a ticket, he won it. He was born in the right pin code and in the right stomach of the right person. So his father was Bill Gates. No, you and I are not. So what can we do? So certain things you have to let go and be realistic and be rooted.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for indirectly bringing in the followership versus leadership principle. And I'm also remembering Duryodhana, who got to be CEO, may not be directly but indirectly for about 13 years, and then it was not easy to hold on to that position if there is somebody else who seems better and then is willing to compete with you.
Well, I beg to differ, since I'm his Ram Jethmalani.
Thank you, sir. Please. Absolutely, sir.
You see, he was the crown prince of a ruling king, which was Dhrashtra. The kingdom was his by right. The Pandavas' father, Pandu, had abdicated the throne and gone away to Himalayas. He was incapable of begetting children. The 5 sons of the mother were from 4 different fathers. And at the time they staked a claim on the kingdom, the father was dead. So where was the legitimate claim for the Pandavas to claim? So when you say that Duryodhana was not a natural or a spontaneous king, I beg to differ. One has to view the whole story in a different perspective, I would imagine. If I were to, you see, one can in a lighter vein say that history is written by the victors. The whole Mahabharata is from the perspective of the Pandavas. Okay, Pandavas won the Kurukshetra war. So it's written from their perspective. But Duryodhana's case, as Ram Jethmalani puts it in the book, is, had they asked for a part of the kingdom as supplicants, I would have given them some. But they staked a claim on it. And Bhagavad Gita said, go with the higher dharma. It also said Raja Dharma is the highest dharma. Then as a legitimate king myself, or the crown prince myself, my highest dharma was protecting my kingdom. So what did I do wrong? So that is what the book is all about. So, but this was in a lighter way, not as a serious thing. It's just since we are on the subject, one had to bring it in.
Certainly, sir. It makes the discussion far more interesting.
More interesting. And
there are a lot of people with very, very differing perspectives in the audience, and I think it adds value to them.
Yeah.
Here, I just have a question for Mr. Sudhakar. Professor Sudhakar, are we on time, or do we have time? We are at 7:36 right now.
Time is something which is finite always. But I'm looking at the answers given by Dr. Raghunathan, and every answer is triggering a new question. So I'm also tempted to ask one question now, if you permit me, sir. See, what began as a dynastic struggle between within a family for throne is throwing up so many issues, dilemmas, learnings for all of us. It's like, layer after layer. Every time we read Mahabharata, we go over it, we are mining something more and mining something new. Similarly, every time you answer a question, it is actually triggering a new one. And this is an unending discussion for all of us every time, and including this time. See, therefore, it puts one thing on the screen, that learning is permanent. I mean, the whole issue is learning is permanent, and that's what is coming through. So I have one question, which I'm sure many people in the audience also would have, but I'm not sure if they have asked it. So the question is that currently we are going through some unprecedented times. A huge humanitarian crisis is unfolding in front of our eyes. There is something that we don't have as a knowledge, we don't have as a track record, we don't have as any benchmark. So we have to deal with a lot of unknowns. If we have to pick up a lesson or two from the Mahabharata, and India in this context will have to take certain decisions. And if Krishna were to be alive, sorry to say, if Krishna were present here in India, what would be the advice to the leaders of this country to take certain decisions like the way we have to deal with right now? For example, we have over 4 lakh new cases every single day over the last few days. Thousands of deaths reported, unreported we are not aware of. The case positivity is only multiplying exponentially, and experts from within the country and from outside, like Dr. Fauci, have told us to lock it down. Now, the dilemma between locking it down and opening it up and containing it, or the dilemma between the lives and the livelihood. Now, every dilemma, as you mentioned in your talk, sir, was dealt with by a construct of dharma. Now, what would help us in this context? If Krishna were to be there, what advice would be given to the leaders of this country between lives and lockdown, lives and livelihood, or between lockdown or containing it? Over to you, sir.
That's a very, very, very profound question, Sudhakar. Thank you very much. In a lighter vein, I'll say even Lord Krishna cannot save India at this point. At another level, again, in a lighter vein, I'll say our leaders are more likely to listen to the Rama than Krishna. But that said, okay. But, coming to the real issue that you are trying to address is, let me put it this way. In fact, I'll make a small diversion, because yesterday I had written an article in Deccan Herald where I said the dilemma of COVID, So I had basically, so it's a related theme, but that dilemma is a very small fraction of what you have outlined in a bigger way, where I said that, look, in most of our housing communities where we live, we send out circulars that outsiders are not to be allowed inside. Nobody is allowed to do any repairs to their houses, house painting, electricians, plumbing work, etc. is all to be postponed. Because if outsiders come in, there is a higher risk for the family and children and so on. Now, when you look at it purely from the point of view of the risk to self and family, that statement seems very right. But when we do it, in the process, the small-time vendors, the painter who earns his livelihood by getting the daily wage on that day, the carpenter, the plumber, the electrician, the dhobi, these are people whose children cannot eat on the day they do not do work. The drivers, the housemaids, and so on. So if it is an adversity that humanity has to come to the fore. Selfishness is very innate to all of us. But in such utter diversity, if you are not going to be compassionate about those who are less fortunate than us, then are we truly being human? Okay, that's the dilemma. But at the same time, if I say outsiders can come, I'm putting my own family at higher risk. So how do you resolve this dilemma? And I tried to say that, yes, we have to enforce the measures strictly, that even the outsiders who come in must have a COVID negative certificate, that they ought to be wearing masks, they ought to be maintaining social distance and other norms. But I also said at the same time, can you make a cup of tea and give those workers? Can you give a lunch for that worker? Because at home, his family is already under severe stress. We can take some extra precaution, put double mask, at a crunch, wear a visor if there are workers at home. If they are not wearing very clean clothes, give a set of old clothes. Anyway, I haven't seen my trouser for the last 1 year practically. So give a set of clothes to the workers to wear. So can we draw a middle path somewhere? With a little more effort, we take care of ourselves, but at the same time, help those who are less fortunate than us. So to some extent, if I were Lord Krishna advising my politicians, I'll say, look, guys, I understand that you guys have to win your elections. But is winning the election more important than the health of your people from whom you get your votes? So I would have said that, look, first and foremost, your dharma, if you are BJP, your dharma was, you came on the platform of bringing corruption down. You did not even start with a Lokpal bill. Much of the problem, even in Corona times, is corruption. Where is the money that is being raised in the name of Corona going? Why are the hospitals not equipped, even though we spend so much of money into the hospitals? What is our administration doing? If the Home Minister for 6 months has only been engaged in elections, what Home Ministry has been doing to run the country? So I would start by pointing out to our ministers that, look, while you can keep an eye on elections, your primary dharma is to administer. A government's job is to administer. yes, when it becomes time to find the next government, you do have to spend some time winning the election. That is the way of democracy. But democracy doesn't have to be made a bad example of. Democracy can be made a good example of. So my advice to the politicians would be along those lines, that you have to learn to optimize. You know, ultimately what has happened? They spent all the time in West Bengal, lost that election, but lost the COVID battle also. So everybody is worse off in the process. Okay. So, considering one can't give a very indefinite answer to these, and one can go on and on. And again, that will generate new questions. But broadly, what I'm saying is I'll put a sense of proportion into the need for administering India. India is today what we are, not because we lack good quality people, but those good quality people have washed their hands off the need for administering the country. And I think civil servants need to pick up their dharma. The judiciary needs to pick up its own dharma. The police needs to pick up its own dharma. You cannot let COVID beds be auctioned away and so on. So the point I'm trying to make is, this is the time when, as Lord Krishna, I would remind everybody of their dharma and say that much of the problem that we have seen today is because none of you have done your dharma. You are muted, Sudhakar.
I'm muted by the excellent answers that you have been giving, sir.
Oh my God.
Now I have recovered from that. Thank you very much for this amazing session, hugely engrossing and highly insightful at every layer of discussion that we have had. I'm sure my friends who have joined this session from around the country have really thoroughly enjoyed this session, and I'm sure they're going to go over the recording again and again, like the way I'm
honored and humbled. Thank you very much.
Sir, actually, we have large number of questions still pending to ask, but then we have to cut it off because your time is more precious and we cannot hold you for long.
I have all the time in the world these days, so don't worry about me.
Okay, sir.
You are the guys who are doing something more productive than I am these days.
Wonderful. So while I want to thank you for your amazing session, I have got an answer and hint from you that you can spend a little more time with us. Then I would request Professor R. Prasad to bring up a few more questions if he has.
I don't have a problem. Not a problem at all.
Over to Professor Prasad.
Thank you, sir. I think one question which has been coming up is, how do you get the millennials to understand what can be gained from the Mahabharata? How do you communicate to them? How do you inspire them?
Only by calling people like me with hair which is white, or somebody like Devidat Patnaik, or somebody like Gocharan Das. These are much better people than I am, and I'm sure they can do a much better job of making the subject more interesting. You say it's like making a subject interesting. Students often don't like chemistry because the way it is taught, or they don't like history because they think it's only about learning dates. But if you have a good teacher, it can make a big difference. So I would think that you are already doing something interesting along those lines by picking up topics like these, which I see them in a different context, but not in the context that you are doing. And perhaps this is the right way to go. You call more informed speakers. As I said, these are very good speakers, because of course, neither Dr. Chakravarti nor Dr. S.P. Singh are there anymore. Mr. Gurchan Das is aging, but he may agree to an online session. Who knows? And I'm sure Devidat Patnaik will be more than happy to come on board.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So the next question is about what one sees of ethics in the Mahabharata, and how do you connect that to what happens today?
You see, the thing about ethics is the values that you hold close to your heart, they come at a price. If you look at Yudhishthira, he did pay a lot of price for his upholding the value of dharma. So nothing that you hold precious comes without a price. But if you are willing to pay a price immediately at the first obstacle that you come across, to a principle that you hold dear, then that principle was never dear in the first place. So I think the problem with today's generation is we lack the stamina, the strength, the moral fiber to hold by our value systems. And it is in this process that a child sitting in the car watches his father bribing the traffic constable by ₹100 note when he stopped for violation of not wearing a seat belt or not wearing a mask, or on a motorcycle for not wearing a helmet. Then what is the kind of a learning? I remember I used to ask a very silly question when I used to sit on the interview board for candidates for IIM Ahmedabad. I would often ask, while coming to the interview, if supposing you are held by some traffic constable somewhere because you had by mistake jumped the red light and he asked you to come aside and put you there, and you are getting late for the interview, and he's made it very clear that he's expecting you to pay some money and then he will let you go. Otherwise, he's going to waste your time there and you'll be late for the interview. What will you do? Typical clash of value system, typical clash of what is the right dharma. Your principle is I should not, let us say, bribe. I'm getting late for an interview, so there's a price to pay. What will you do? And believe me, even in the 90s, when I used to be interviewing a lot of candidates, a lot of them will say, sir, let me be honest with you. Do you want me to be honest? I'll say, yeah, of course I want you to be honest. I will pay ₹100 and make sure I'm here on time. Let me be very practical. I always used to score them very low on some range of mark which was given to me for my discretion. Because I said, if at 20 and 21, you're so damn practical that you don't want to stand up for your principle and don't want to take a chance that you can come and explain to me why you got late, you don't have that trust in the system, then I don't think you are going to make a great manager. On that dimension of interview, I used to penalize them certain marks. No, so I personally believe that if someone is that practical at 21, by 31, the guy would be a write-off. That is what most of our administrators today are all about, I sometimes think. So I think what this generation or any generation, including ours, should have learned, but we didn't. But what I would like the new generation to learn is principles are worth paying for. No principle comes cost-free. No, never. You may not have to pay a cost immediately, but a point will come when you have to pay a cost, and that will be the test of how dear that principle was to you. And I think that one needs to remember.
Thank you, sir. I think another question which is coming up repeatedly from the audience, and which it may help to throw a bit more light on that, though you have done so in some of the earlier answers, is how does the Mahabharata effectively relate to the MBA and the workplace? And here, one of the thoughts that had come to the mind is that there are so many cases inside the Mahabharata, which are very much like the cases that we often discuss. And if you are able to take ourselves away from that particular time and the values and of that particular time, the context of that particular time, how do you then relate all that to what a person can pick up in what can get discussed in a classroom in the MBA as well as managers in the workplace? This was a question which is again.
You can always discuss a point of dharma and greater good. Even in the previous question that you talked about, the how to value one's principles, is about doing one's dharma and having that blind faith that no matter what the outcome is, I should do the right thing. Karmanyevadhikarastu ma phaleshu kadachana. The problem is we lose faith in that dharma quote very quickly. We think that no, it's only for books, it's not for actual living. But I believe that if everyone tries to live it, many of our conflicts will get automatically resolved. So, workplace is more often than not about conflicts. Should I keep my boss happy or should I do the right thing? Isn't that a conflict? My boss has told me you have to make this purchase at this price. Come hell or high water. I don't care what you do. So should I go and bribe the other guy, the supplier? No, these are repeatedly, maybe some may be more stark, some may be less stark, But more often than not, these are about choices that you make. And choices that you make in the short run, it may cost you your promotion. But then you will know that you're probably in the wrong company. You should not be in a company which is valuing your worth by this. So then probably if you move, it may be for the better. For all you know, you are looking for a company where you tell in that interview that this is what happened in the previous job. Maybe you are not naming the company or the boss or whatever, but you say that you hold certain principles to your heart and you could not follow by them. And if that company takes you, you are on to a better company. If that company thinks you are not the person they want, you are being saved once again by a similar kind of a company. But it needs moral fiber to stand by it. But we, very often part of it, one can understand that one lives, one can only be hungry for 2 days. But the third day, one can no longer find it very easy to hold one's principle. But life is not always about losing one's job, or choices are not always about going without food. There are choices. I have made I'm 55-year-old. I have enough savings in the bank. Why am I playing the cards of the management which are not the right cards? Why do I have to, I'm a minister, I'm well off. Why do I have to listen to, why do I have to continue being corrupt? Why can I not fight, at least push against corruption? So I'm an, administrator. I'm an IAS officer. I will get my pension anyway. I'm doing very well. Why do I have to compromise my principles because the minister wants something done? I am a DGP of the state. Why do I have to compromise principles and catch some innocent guy and beat the confession out of him because some minister is behind it? So these are not losing a job situation, or even if you lost a job, so what? It's a question of, by now you're secure. So you're not going to lose your livelihood or your food. So there is a lot about dharma, and I think ultimately it boils down to that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for passing on the anchor of dharma. And here I'm able to connect to something which is coming up in the HR surveys of millennials, and that is purpose. I think a lot of millennials are asking about what is the purpose and how do I find meaning out of this job.
Right.
And I think this connects perfectly to that. And then if you're able to leverage that and then take it into the next generation, it will be great.
Correct.
I think a lot of questions can be anchored around the dharma point, sir.
Yes,
whatever I'm
exactly.
reading here. Yeah.
Exactly. See, that's what I said. The beauty of that dharma thing is it beats Nash equilibrium hollow anytime. The biggest management dilemma is sorted out if you go by dharma. If everybody says, this is my dharma, I will do what is the right thing. I don't care about what the other does. If Sudhakar is going to croak on me, I don't care a shit. For me, not croaking on a friend is my dharma. I will do that. And if Sudhakar also thought the same, we are both better off. This is what is the fundamental of my book called Games Indians Play, where I've tried to explain it in much greater length.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think the discussion can be taken forward, whether it is for more specific questions from those who want to understand in other sessions. And we have taken about 1.5 hours in this particular session. And I think clearly there is a takeaway for each member. And I think ICFAI is there for IFHE is there for those who want to understand this a bit better through other workshops. Good suggestions have been given by Professor here. And I think with that, as far as I'm concerned, I think, we've got quite a bit from this. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, all of you. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sudhakar Rao. Thank you, Dr. Prasad.
Thank you very much, sir. I also want to make a pleasant remark on the fact that you have extended the energy that you have originally committed to beyond the 1 hour. Actually, it was only half an hour.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So nice. As I mentioned earlier, it can go on and on, but we need to draw a line, and I think we should have a sequel of a webinar as some of the audience members are requesting. We will probably look at those opportunities and connect back with all of them. So
Thank you.
Great learning. It's a great session, sir. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Good night. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. With your permission, we request you to stay safe, take a lot of care, and spend time with your family, and let us see how far we go towards creating a self-regulation and saving ourselves and our families in these uncertain times. Once again, I thank all of you. I thank Professor R. Prasad and everyone around here. Thank you and good night.